Okay. So I got a sign that our webinar officially has started. My name is Evgenia, and I'm the head of the retail in Latvia. And we're very glad to welcome all of you to our webinar, which is dedicated to the psychology in the retail. And today, with my colleague Katya Zubsman, we have invited amazing guests and the wonderful lady Kate Nightingale. Kate has amazing experience in the psychology in the retail, and apart from that, Kate is very inspiring person. She's the founder of the Retail of the Woman Society, and she will give you more explanation of her experience when she will start the presentation. So maybe while everyone is still joining us, I will tell you briefly why we decided to choose this particular topic. And actually it's very naturally as it's very connected with all hot topics on the market. As you have recognized, all of us started to think about psychology in the all aspects of our life: work-life balance, our relations with the employees, with the team, with the relatives, our relations with ourselves. So we trying to understand how do we feel, who we are, and where we would like to go. And of course, it started to be an essential part of the retail when we're analyzing how we as the customers are feeling in the shops. And not only that, so, and as together with the Katja, we like to discuss hot topics. We decided to invite Kate and to discuss psychology in the retail altogether. And our agenda for today looks following. So, together with the Katja, we will briefly guide you through the market situation and what is happening in the retail segment in the Baltic market. Then together then I will give a floor to the Kate, and Kate will be our main star of our webinar. So she will show us what is happening in the retail and how we could adjust the psychology in the retail. And then we will finish our webinar with a questions and answer session. So you will see the section right now already in the Zoom. So please feel free to send our questions, and in the end of the webinar, we will go through those questions. And what is the most important, the target for all of us today is to understand how we need to adapt in the retail for all of us. So for the landlord, it's very essentially to understand how to create the very profitable and effective platform for the tenants, so the tenants could earn in the shopping centers. For the tenants, it's very important to understand how they could adjust their concepts and what they could bring to the customers in their shops. And of course, for the customers, it's very important to understand where we feel better, how it's better for us, what we would like to achieve in the buying in the shops. So it's kind of the link with all together. So not to waste the time, I will start with the most interesting topic. This is the situation in the Baltic markets. I will start with the figures and the statistics, so it will be a bit boring, but I will try to make it fast and interesting. And then Katya will continue on the great transformation of the retail, what we already did in the Baltic market. So kind of to understand what homework was already passed in the our market. So as you already recognize, our economy is trying to recover. And here we need to mention one good thing and maybe another is not so positive thing. From one side, the population or the potential customers who could go and to buy in the stores are the same numbers what we had in the last 2 years. So the population of the Baltic market are kind of keeping the same level. And another positive factor is that average salary is increasing, but taking into account that inflation in the last 4 years was more than 30%. So actually, we don't feel that increase of the salary, and actually, we can even buy less than we could buy before. So, from the population point of view and the customer point of view, we are the same amount of the customer, the same amount of the population. And so who are the main fighters for those customers? And of course, first of the fighter, this is the e-commerce. So of course, the e-commerce are taking essential part in all of our lives, and also it changed after the COVID. But if we are looking to the total retail performance in the last year, so we see that among the Baltic countries, the e-commerce store is taking just 2.3% over the total retail turnovers on the market. So it means that still people are buying more in the shopping center and then they are spending less in the e-commerce stores. But here I need to add that we took the statistic from the e-commerce stores which has registered in the Baltic market. So it means that if, for example, I will buy something from the Uniqlo from the UK, we will not see that in the total retail numbers. It will go only to the stock only if I will buy something from the local e-commerce store. In the reality, also as the customer and also as the professional, I see that we started to spend more in the e-commerce store and of course in the international e-commerce stores, but still we don't see that this proportion could reach the physical spendings in the shopping centers or in the retail object. So still we're going to the shopping centers and still we're buying goods there. Another fighter for the customers who could spend the money in the shopping center, this is actually the retail objects. This is the shopping center, the retail object, the retail parks. Good news here that as you may see, the pipeline in this year is showing not so positive numbers. So it means that we have just a few objects in Riga and the Vilnius under construction, and it's mainly the DIY store on the mixed use projects. And there won't be surprises. So this year, no big shopping centers or other big retail objects. And therefore, if we will look at the proportion of the market, so still the shopping centers are taking the main proportion of the total stock. Still, this is the larger retail objects. However, we see that already it's starting to increase the share of the hypermarket, department stores, and the DIY. The retail parks, this is still the object which is just developing in the Baltic market. And as we are taking in our statistic just the object which is more than 5,000 square meters, so it's not showing in the stock structure statistic. But from the reality, what I could say that of course after the COVID, the spendings among the countries also change. So I mean that a lot of the local developers, local money are spending in the Baltics, and the local investors they are building some smaller retail parks or retail properties, but taking into account that this is less than 5,000 square meters, so we are not counting the total stock, but it will come in some time. And if we look from the another angle, so it means that those brands who could take the pipeline, who could fill the vacancy, who could be those new attractions to the shopping center. So basically, we also looked at the new brands which recently entered the Baltic market last year. And actually, it's kind of the positive that we have a lot of the new brands which is coming to the market, comparing to the sizes of the retail market. So Arket entered to the Tallinn and Riga and opened the one store in each other. Yobovi with this e-commerce concept entered the Riga, which is also part of the group of the Half Price, which also entered the Riga and opened the first store in the Alpha, and the new stores will be also developing. Miniso International Brands also entered the Baltic market and expanded in Riga. Trade House, the biggest cosmetic stores, entered the Riga and right now is keep growing. Decathlon is still expanding about the Baltic countries. Trespass, which is the part of the Denim Team group, also opened one store in the Tallinn. And Calvin Klein, which is opened the monobrand store. So this is kind of the new brand showing that there is movements to the Baltic market. But when we look from another angle, who are those active brands which is actually filling the vacancy on the market, and those who are doing the significant impact on the retail pipeline, we're still coming to the discounters. So mainly the discounters as a Pepco, as the scene says, they are doing the huge expansion. So they're taking very large part of the retail stock. And the grocery store segment, which is booming among the all Baltic market and is still expanding. But what is interesting, if we look to all those logos and all two brands, we understand that basically this is the tenant not of the shopping center mainly. This is the tenants of the retail parks, of the standalone, of the hypermarkets, which is like either near the shopping center or in the regions. And therefore, we are coming to the topic that still shopping centers need to do something with their transformation. And what kind of the transformation shopping centers need to do? My colleague Katya Zupsman will give you an examples. Katya, please.
Hello from my side. I'm a head of retail in Colliers, Estonia, and I'll walk you through those recent changes and adaptation processes what shopping centers had to go through in the recent years. Shopping centers, like people, are subject to an inevitable life cycle. They emerge, grow, mature, and age. And sometimes, unlike people, shopping centers' life cycle is a little bit altered. Some of them emerge, grow, fail, redevelop, start again, and then trying to mature, etc. So for shopping centers, we may say now clearly that second life is possible. And it's quite refreshing to see that now in Baltics we can see many good examples of how it is possible. And here are some of them, clearly not all, but we just picked some different. For example, in Estonia, we had modern, very big shopping center T1, which went through bankruptcy process and was with very high vacancy. And the new concept is pretty interesting, though here on the presentation it's written that like Olympia Shopping Center, it's became an outlet center, but that's only one part of the concept. That the second floor is more focused on outlet concepts, but this shopping center is quite big. It's already quite large GLA. But for example, on the third floor, the management decided to create, let's say, a zone for the spirit, everything for health, beauty, but also everything what's connected with free time, everything for the hobbies. We can see there all kind of different sport clubs and also some medical centers, and it's working pretty well. And for example, in Latvia also we can see different transformations of department stores. So for example, the former Podium department store is now transformed to the residential function and is selling the apartments under the project name Gatvis Lofti on the Gatvis Street. And another department store, Elcor department store, one of Elcor department stores, is now transformed to the modern conference center, ATA Center. And sometimes even the very well working shopping centers would like to improve themselves and to add some segments into the schemes. And so we can see also some examples when shopping centers goes through the renovation phase in order to improve the customer experience in terms of common spaces and to look really like a modern shopping center schemes, and alongside of adapting the tenant mix, maybe giving up the let's say traditional retail space for again medical services or beauty services, We see those examples also in Viru Keskus, where the fourth floor is totally transformed and given for those concepts, and it's working very well. Now we can say that already, as there was some time past, that the clients actually like that, and took the services, welcomed the services very well. So I think we will see that those changes will occur even faster, and will force shopping center owners constantly and actively build value and keep up with modern market standards also in future. And we can go for the next topic. What are those trends which are driving this constant development and redevelopment process in shopping centers? I'll just choose maybe 4 bigger one, and of course, customer. Everything what we do for the customer, and customer experience is very important. And the increasing customer expectations will dictate the creation of unique common spaces, different entertainment attractions, recreation activities. And we can clearly see that modernized shopping centers performing better than shopping centers with outdated design and concepts. And also not only from the customer perspective, but also if the new brands and tenants would like to enter the market, then they will always choose the shopping center which is modern and look really nice. Services, focus on the services. In the recent years, we see the increase in services of all kinds in the tenants mix of shopping centers. And this trend will definitely continue. Shopping centers will increase their offerings with a variety of zones and types for different services: gastronomy, entertainment, beauty services, as I mentioned, medical, sports, cultural, educational centers. You can see also some examples. For example, this fourth floor in Viru Keskus also on the screen. And also something I mentioned already, the increasing demand for mixed-use spaces. The speed of life in our everyday is ever increasing. We have to multitask to solve many problems daily, and hence I think these schemes where people can realize multiple needs in the same one place are more preferred by the customers. And shopping centers have a very great potential to fit in with this trend, as they already have all the infrastructure needed, good parking solutions. And again, coming back to this T1 example, where the parents can bring the maybe 2-3 kids after school, and those kids, one can go to the fencing club, another will go to his Muay Thai training, the parent will go maybe to gym and or buy the groceries, or just work in some common space which is nicely designed already, and don't have to wait maybe in some parking lot in the car. And the last not least, this ESG is a hot topic on every conference, webinar. It's a catalyst for change, applying also to shopping centers and retailers, whether we want it or not. And at the moment in Baltic, it's more driven by focusing on the letter E out of this abbreviation, referring more to the energy consumption and gas emissions or some other regulatory requirements. But now we also see some examples of actually doing something differently. For example, also Ülemiste Keskus in Tallinn made an experiment of using the green asphalt They tested the durability, and the test was very successful. So probably we'll see in future that all the asphalt around the shopping center will be actually the green asphalt. But also any other similar activities, using of green energy, improving public transportation connectivities, bike infrastructures, using the reusable packages in food and beverage sector, those kind of things. So, as we talked about the challenges in economy and changes in retail sector, we cannot forget about the end user, our customer. What shall we as an industry do to make customer come to this retail scheme and consume the product and services? That leads us to the main topic of our webinar today. So please, I give the floor to Kate Nightingale, who will share with us secrets about consumer psychology. The floor is yours, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katya, and thank you so much, Evgenia. I'm just gonna pop up my presentation, so give me 2 secs. Now, I don't know how many of you, where was it? There you go. I don't know how many of you have been in Riga on the conference I was speaking at a few months ago. So obviously there I kind of discussed a little bit more of those macro trends, like some of the ones that Katya and Evgenia also pointed out, using some of the examples of the developments that you're seeing in your region. But today what I want to kind of focus much more on is actually how we can kind of in the detail of design and, you know, the experience creation, really kind of get that customer to feel, think, and do what we basically want them to feel, think, and do. So just a little bit of an introduction for those of you who don't know me. I'm a consumer and retail psychologist. I have an agency called Humanising Brands, where we basically work with a lot of different retail and consumer brands, as well as architects, designers, insight agencies, UX agencies, loads of different other types of businesses, property, and so on, so on. The whole idea is basically applying behavioral sciences to better the human experience of brands, spaces, technology, and everything else. That's in it short. You know, I do a lot of conference speaking and sharing. I also lecture at a couple of universities. And I also had this crazy idea last year to set up a women of retail community, because I'm very passionate about diversity and inclusion and the value it really builds and, you know, brings to the business. Here are just some of the clients that we worked throughout the years with. I will mention a little bit more the example of the work that we did on the retail store concept with Swarovski, as well as with Dowsing and Reynolds, who are a homeware brand from UK, just kind of exemplifying a few elements that you can utilize in your spaces. And in short, basically, everything that we do is we translate brands into the brain language. So how the brain actually picks out brands, how it perceives them, and how we can therefore press specific buttons on people's brains to really kind of get them to, as I said, feel, think, and do what you want them basically to do, right? So just as a clear kind of first introduction into it, we are not rational or calculated by no means. Our brain, the way it's designed, the biggest chunk of it is subconscious. On average, we make about 95%, and in some calculations, even more of the decisions entirely subconsciously. What it simply means is we do not have conscious awareness of making those decisions, nor we have control over that process of making those decisions. And it comes from the fact that our subconscious brain is way more powerful in processing information than our conscious one. So as you can see, it processes 11 million bits of information per second. Those stats are per second. And I said process, which means you perceived it, you analyzed it, you know what it means, you made a decision, you probably even took action in, you know, based on that perception, and you have no awareness that it happened to you. So that is how our brain is allowing us to be extremely effective and efficient in, in everyday life, because we wouldn't be able to run away from the tiger, 10,000 years ago, if we didn't have that ability. We wouldn't be able to survive. We wouldn't be able to create anything. That's why, we need to be able to understand how that subconsciousness works and tap into it, reverse engineer that process, so we know what we need to put in front of our customers' subconsciousness so they can feel, think, and do what we basically want them, right? So that's kind of what we're going to go into today. Now, the challenge that you're also facing because of that power of the subconscious brain is that the first impression can take as little as 100 milliseconds, which is 1/10 of a second. That's why people don't even walk into your spaces. That's why people don't even stay on your website for less than a fraction of a second. That's why they drop baskets. That's why they don't pick up products from the shelves. That's simply why, and you don't understand why they're doing it, because even if you ask them, they won't be able to tell you the real reason. And the real reason could have been because of the direction of the music from the store that it was coming from. So you chose a completely different product. Or it could have been, the aircon, or it could have been a bad design of the window display, or it could have been a weird noise in the shopping center. And you have no idea that they've done it, but I do. This is exactly what I look at those things for, the things that you would never think to look at, because basically the principle that your brain works on is you don't see that what you don't know, So for me to be able to notice those things, and for my team to be able to notice those little things that might kind of mean that you're going to have 20% less footfall, it's not an issue, but a customer won't be able to tell you that. And therefore we need to be able to kind of use those little elements, and more often than not, they are really great because they can be used as an incremental marginal gains as opposed to whole big revamps. That's specifically for existing spaces. And that's, for example, when we do our behavioral audits of existing properties or existing kind of stores or anything like that, we look at those kind of little improvements that can be made on top of the already existing design and structure. But when we obviously work on a new design projects, like we worked with Swarovski, that's when we kind of build in all the big macro and then the micro little tools that we can actually embed in a whole kind of concept brief, and then all the aspects of the design. So we're going to go through it a little bit. Now, another thing that we need to kind of understand as well before we kind of dive into our little tiny tools that we can use is that we need to also be able to identify and evoke very specific set of emotions at a specific steps of the customer journey for us to be able to basically direct the decision making, but also the brand perception. Now, emotions kind of happen as a reaction to whatever we were perceiving, our brain is perceiving in an environment. But emotions are extremely effective because they're a catalyst in the decision making. They are connected with higher product value perceptions, higher preference for certain products because we have evoked positive emotions, better brand perception, overall higher satisfaction, higher brand recall, as well as a stronger brand memorability. So basically, if you get all of that on, in summary, your brand is much stronger in a type of position on a top of mind than if you do not evoke strategically very specific emotions. Now, those emotions can be much more related to the overall brand and how they are spread across the brand universe and your different channels. But there are also the smaller kind of elements of an emotion that we are going to then put into the environment. And this is, for example, what we did with Swarovski when we were one of the things we did. We did plenty of stuff in that concept. But one of the key things that we did was basically creating an emotion map throughout the customer journey. So what kind of emotions do we want to evoke, at what intensity as well, at each specific customer journeys based on the KPIs that we had for that space. Some of the KPIs were things like increasing the human connection, so between both the customers and customers, but also the customers and employees, increasing the dwell time, products per basket, higher product value and less focus on price, but rather on the product, overall entertainment, and what else? I think, yeah, those are like the key kind of KPIs. So we utilized a very kind of specific layout of the different emotions that we wanted to evoke, and a clear kind of intensity of emotions and this kind of crescendo and diminuendo of emotions across the customer journey to actually activate specific aspects of behaviors or decision making or brand perception or interactions with people. And again, it's not a rocket science for me, but then how do we map it out across different elements of a design? So different textures, sounds, lighting placements, directions, all of those stuff that are able to evoke those emotions in the way that we want them, together also with other benefits of those little details. So let's go through some of them. Now, to be able to really kind of get to that customer, especially to that subconscious, we really need to look at various sensory details of our environment and how the science and the previous experience have showed us that they're affecting our behaviors, emotions, but also our decision-making processes, as well as our overall perception of the brand. Now, contrary to common belief, we do not have 5 senses. The last count on the senses is 53. Yep, I did say 53. That was not a mistake. Now, whenever I work on any of the projects, we tend to focus on about 8 to 9 major groups of senses. Here are just some of them and some of the elements that we would look at. It's not exhaustive list by no means, and it's very much dependent on the project, on the brand, the type of customer, what are the KPIs we want to influence. But here are just some of the elements that we would consider some of the benefits, like look at that, price perception or dwell time, overall satisfaction, word of mouth influence, forms of social interactions, pro-social behavior or controlling of antisocial behavior, and so on, so on. Those are all things that can be utilized. And don't be fooled, those are not just things we can use in the physical environments. We can use it in packaging, in branding, in UX design, web design, metaverse, everything. Yes, we can do technology multisensory. It's possible. So these are just some of the things that we're using. But let's go through a few examples. Now, one of the senses that we very often forget about is balance. Now, this is a really bad example how not to do it, basically. Now, as soon as we create any changes to the balance, so your balance is controlled by your inner ear, right? Even as subtle changes to it create discomfort, lack of safety, and more importantly, uncertainty of decision making. Now, what that means is you're either going to leave the environment, you're not going to walk into a space, or you're going to find it super hard to make a decision on a product. Even if you do end up buying it, your satisfaction from the product and the usage of that product is going to be much smaller than if we do not affect the sense of balance negatively. Now, some of the things, so in this case, that ceiling, which has this kind of design, it also actually has quite a bit of mirrors being used in that. So that kind of continuous reflectivity. Fast moving images, fast videos, flashing, visual kind of, lights or anything like that, even if it's just a broken flashing light, complex geometrical patterns, and so on, so on. Those are lots of examples that can affect our, sense of balance. There's also aspects of sounds that can affect our sense of balance that also need to be controlled, and majority of them are quite negative forms of sound. So your acoustics are extremely important to be able to kind of consider that as well. Inevitably, you want people to walk in, you want them to buy, and you want them to be satisfied with it so they can come back and buy. So inevitably, if you affect negatively sense of balance, you're not going to get that. Now, movement is something that a lot of people don't think about too much, kind of how we affect how people move around the space. Are they moving up or are they moving down? Are we making them look up or look right? Or how do we ask them to move fast or slow? We obviously want them to move a little bit slower because that enhances the ability for the brain to process more information about our brands and products. But there is also a concept of implied movement. So an illusion that something is moving, So that could be for things like graphic design, or it could be, for example, for product display, which is what we did with Dowsing and Reynolds in their store. So we created this idea that the product's kind of moving towards you. So it actually coming out and it's building a stronger rapport and relationship with you in a sense. So that's kind of what your brain is thinking, which actually has been shown to enhance product engagement, enhance product value perception, overall attention to your product actually is stronger, and that leads to higher willingness to purchase and purchase intention. A much more typical application of that is, for example, when you are using movement in your mannequins, right? So the mannequins are not just standing like that, but you kind of have like this, or they're running, or whatever else they're doing. Your brain is wired to pay attention to movement because of, generic kind of need to protect itself and for survival. So the movement is something that the brain will automatically go and pay attention to. Once you have that attention, you are much more likely to kind of get that engagement and that sale. So how you can kind of use it is obviously dependent on your brand, but that kind of movement is a beautiful, way to really get and grab that customer and get them to potentially buy your product. Now, another sense that we don't often consider is bodily sensations. So bodily sensations are basically kind of about the receptors within our muscles that register how we react to environment. So register the tension or relaxation of the muscles in the reaction to the environment. What it basically tells the brain is immediately, okay, so how do we feel in that space? Do we feel safe? Do we feel good? Do we want to stay around? Do we want to dwell longer? And so on. Now, that information is really crucial because what it basically does is that it creates what I like to colloquially call more headspace. Now, so when your brain registers that environment is good and safe and lovely and whatever and cozy and blah, 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 and all this other good, lovely things, it automatically relaxes. So it stops processing all the dangers in an environment and leaves more mental space for processing other information, like that about your brand or your product, or talking to a sales associate. So you actually have more ability to connect and to pay attention to what is going on in an environment. So you start engaging with the product better, but more importantly, you also slow down your movement. So you're increasing your dwell time, but also increasing the overall sense of satisfaction and comfort and safety that you have in an environment. And one of those aspects that, for example, have been studied in bodily sensation is also how softness or hardness of surfaces is affecting your brand perception. So soft surfaces are more often associated with brands that are friendly, approachable, and kind of, just a good buddy that I can be with and that are very comfortable, and I want to kind of stick around. However, the hard surfaces are associated with brands that are more reliable and trustworthy. So again, there's no one size fits all. It depends on your brand and what you want to kind of project to your customers and what you're also selling, right? And how do you want them to feel in that specific moment as well. Now, things that, that our vision picks up. So outside of basic aspects of lighting, for example, and there's plenty of fun that can be done with lighting, not only lighting direction, but also its color, it's, how dim or light it is, so obviously bright lighting is very often used to reduce antisocial behavior and theft. But it's also less likely to get people more impulsive in their shopping habits. However, it is also more likely to get people to follow trends. So if you are a trends-driven brand, so let's say fast fashion brand, you are much more likely to, to kind of benefit from a bright lighting. But if you are an indulgent, hedonic, impulsive type of, shopping purchase, so a lot of luxury brands, dim lighting is generally going to be much more effective for you, and it will also have a tendency to increase your dwell time. However, the other elements that a lot of people don't necessarily always think about is shape. So rounded and curvy shapes are evolutionary associated with safety and comfort. So what they do again is that they increase that headspace that we have. So not only you dwell longer, but you feel safer, more comfortable in an environment. And then what happens is that you actually process that environment as, as more aligned with you, more comfortable. It increases your attention to the important things like your product or your brand story or your, sales associate interaction. It increases your dwell time, but what it can also be used very well for is indicating action areas in your space and clear, faster movement areas. So what you don't want to have is you don't want to have checker blocks, where people kind of standing and other people cannot interact with the product or move around the space or whatever, right? So this is where you can actually use the more spiky geometrical shapes to kind of get people to move faster because they feel less comfortable in those spaces. But when you want them to interact with the product or with a sales associate, this is where better usage of that is with the rounder curvature. And this is kind of how nicely L'Occitane on Regent Street have actually used that element. So not just kind of the curvatures around the tables, or obviously that central area, or even the round mirrors where you on purpose need to kind of interact with the product, and play with it and see how it looks. But then when it's an actual product display, they kept it geometrical, rectangular or square or whatever else. So you actually move faster. So that kind of creates a more efficiency, but a better experience, more pleasant experience. Now, sound is something that a lot of people don't think about. It always makes me laugh when, when I work on any concept, kind of new concept designs, and I ask about smell and sound, and we will do it later. I'm like, but where you put your speakers, meaning where you put your wiring, is also going to be important. So there's, for example, studies that indicate that, if you kind of trying to choose between two products, then you're gonna choose the product that it's at the same side as the direction of the music. So if you have a speaker over here about your right, hand, you're gonna choose the product that you're holding in your right hand, or that it's standing on the right side of the shelf. You're not gonna choose the one on the left side. So even things like that, they matter, although they might sound crazy, but they do matter because that's how our brain works. Now, obviously, other sounds of it, other aspect of it is obviously the type of the music and the sound you are playing. And there is crazy amounts of research, anything from genre to, whether the music is lyrical or instrumental, to its tempo and so on. Not only needs to be matched to your brand, but also to the specific KPIs in terms of your, emotions, behaviors, and decision making that you want to affect. But also even things like, particular lyrics have been shown in in different studies to either enhance prosocial behavior or to actually enhance antisocial behavior. So even things related to theft and and any kind of protection of your spaces and making people feel safer generally in your environments is also going to be affected by sound. Which also has been shown to enhance the general satisfaction and willingness to purchase. But another thing that we also have to relate to any forms of sounds is memorability of an experience as well. And things like movement is also going to be affected. So how fast or slow you're moving around the space. So this is a lovely example from Apple in Milan. So they obviously use natural sound of a waterfall, which is actually associated with people coming together, but it also relaxes the brain immediately. So you slow down the movement. So you're basically entering the space already with the willingness to interact with their geniuses, right? and the willingness to stick out in there much longer, right? And you also have a better space, headspace for decision making, which is really good. Now, smell is also something that a lot of people don't kind of use well enough in their spaces. Now, smell, on average, both good choice of smell and good choice of music has been throughout thousands of studies shown to have on average 20% increase on sales, dwell time, satisfaction, impulse shopping, lots of other KPIs like that, if it's kind of obviously well chosen to your brand, to your space, and to the other elements of a design of the space. But for example, other studies have shown that if we, for example, have any products that are gender related and we do not match smell, so let's say you're selling both women's wear and menswear, right? If you do not match a smell on the women's wear floor to more kind of feminine, and on the menswear floor to more masculine, you're losing quite a lot, because the studies have shown that you can improve sales by even 140% and the dwell time by 50% if you have, a more feminine smell in a women's wear section versus a more masculine one. So it's, you can kind of lose quite a lot on a bad choice, but you can gain quite a lot on a really good one. And that's, that's really important. Smell is also not only associated to memories, but also to emotions. So the part of the brain at the back that's responsible for processing smells is a neighbor to the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions, and another part of the brain responsible for memory. So actually utilizing smells increases also things like your brand recall, memorability of an experience. It also can evoke specific emotions that we might want to trigger in an individual to get them to decide particular aspect. And then last but not least, touch. So this is a lovely example of a fully blown tactile experience by Max Mara. So it's their Fluffy pop-up to celebrate 10 years of their Fluffy coat. And it's basically all nice and soft everything, right? Now, obviously, the tactile aspect and the general wider aspect of haptics, that is responsible for things like texture, general touch, temperature, weight of your product, or materials or whatever else, has been basically linked to anything from product engagement to product value, brand perception, and lots of other aspects like that. We used a lot of the tactile elements in both Swarovski's store as well as the Dowsing and Reynolds store, more specifically to enhance the product value and reduce the focus on the price. So if you kind of especially are somewhere at that kind of premium level, I'm not even starting to mention luxury. When you're in a luxury, you have to be using haptics all over the place because they're extremely valuable. But especially if you're at that premium level, which is actually specifically difficult right now and is going to be a specific difficult price level for the next, 10 or so years. This is where the use of tactile solutions can really kind of trick the brain to focus much more on the value as opposed to the price. So if you want to know a little bit more, I just wrote an article for A1 Retail Magazine about some of those aspects. So feel free to read that along as well. And here is also QR code to my LinkedIn profile. So feel free to connect if you want. So that's kind of all from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. It was really amazing, and as I have mentioned, we kind of wanted to discuss the hot topic. This is really the hot topic, what is essential for the all Baltic market. My colleague Anastasia saying that we don't have so many time for the questions, but at least for one questions we do have a time. So the question will be dedicated mainly to the Baltic market. I know that you have been in Riga just once. I don't know, I don't remember exactly about the Lithuania and Estonia, but maybe you could comment from your perception, what is the potential in the Baltic market of, the starting to use that kind of things? And do you see that what kind of step we need to take just maybe to start to improve those things, and maybe you could comment from your perspective, your feeling about the Baltic market and how the brands is using that tricks already right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, you have a lot of the international brands, but there's also very kind of few specific ones. So for those of you guys who don't know, I'm originally from Poland, so so I still kind of understand parts of that market, and I recognize pretty much all of those different brands that you said, from the Polish market. Now, the usage of that has always been there, but if we focus much more on the customers, think about it. Customers are exposed to the global information. And they compare your spaces against what they are able to see on TikTok or Instagram, or when they travel somewhere else, or what their friends that are living in other countries are telling them. The fact of competing just with other kind of specific, brands that you have, next door to yourself, it's not anymore something that is going to be effective. On top of that, you obviously have brands from that are sort of international ones coming into there and competing with you. So the good thing that you can actually do is pretty much be ahead of the curve in your in your area. Focus also on the fact that Baltic market and generally kind of Eastern Europe culture is still very much driven by the belongingness and the social connections, and that warmth and that comfort is extremely important, the family dynamic. So a lot of the stuff that Katya was talking about comes from not only a wider kind of bigger macro trends in the world, but actually also comes driven by the specific kind of cultural nuances that we can see. So the more we are able to implement all of that, and then kind of manifest that into specific elements of a design that are not only culturally sensitive in terms of the requirements of those customers, but are also kind of pushing them ahead of the curve and inspiring them beyond what they're able to, let's say, go and experience in another countries. What do you think? They're gonna then wait up until they take the trip to London or New York to buy that stuff, or they're gonna just buy it from you immediately, right? It's that kind of balance. So for me, the question never is can we apply it or is it already applied, is how can we do things better, and now, not later, because you can benefit now from it, not later. So that's kind of always the question for me.
And I think it will be amazing also conclusion of our webinar that, hey, guys, let's start to apply those things, not tomorrow, but today and now. And this is the key for success. So Kate and Katya, one more time, thank you for the great company. And thank you all participants for having such great webinar with all of us today. We will also send the record to all of you. So maybe meantime you would like to come back and to see it one more time. But ladies, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of
Thank
the day.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.